What happens when a prince expects royal treatment and the room refuses to kneel? What happens when centuries of protocol slam into a stage where everyone plays by the same rules? The Dorian TV Awards glimmered under golden stage lights, the crimson carpet still warm from the celebrity footsteps. The ornate podium stood center stage like a throne in waiting. Cameras were locked in, beams slicing through the air toward the glittering crowd. The hum of anticipation was its own pulse, tense, electric, and fragile. Veteran host Victoria Sterling stood poised, the human embodiment of composure. Her voice carried the authority of a seasoned broadcaster as the teleprompter scrolled seamlessly before her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her tone velvet over steel, "our next guest is here to present the award for Best Documentary Series. Please welcome Harry, Duke of Sussex." Applause erupted. Lights brightened another notch. But on the third step toward the podium, something shifted. A subtle hitch in his stride, a flash of displeasure cutting across Harry's face. The cameras caught it. Millions of viewers at home just didn't know yet what they were seeing. When he reached the microphone, his smile was practiced, but his voice carried an unmistakable edge. "Thank you, Victoria, though I believe there's been a misunderstanding with my introduction." Ever the professional, Victoria smiled warmly. "Of course, how would you prefer to be introduced?" Harry adjusted his tie, jaw set. "I am Prince Harry, His Royal Highness. That is proper protocol, and it's how I should be addressed throughout this evening." The temperature in the room seemed to drop a degree. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. At the edges of the stage, producers exchanged uneasy glances. Victoria's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, a micro-expression even the most trained camera might miss. "I understand your preference, Harry, but our program introduces all guests by their current professional roles. We treat everyone equally here." "Equally?" The word landed like a slap, his tone frosting over. "I am not everyone. I am a member of the British royal family. That title doesn't vanish because I've taken a different path." In the front row, celebrities exchanged silent looks. One camera caught a frozen smile on an actor's face. Another, the twitch of a stagehand's hand signaling, "Cut," to the control booth. Victoria kept her voice level. "We've had former presidents, Nobel Prize winners, and heads of state here. We maintain consistent protocol. Tonight, you're here as a documentary producer and presenter." The silence that followed was deafening. Harry's eyes darkened. His body shifted forward, closing the space between them. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he snapped, his voice hard enough to carry without the mic. "Do you know who you're speaking to? My entire life has been built on proper address and protocol. Your format doesn't erase my identity." Victoria's smile thinned to a line. "Harry, this is the Dorian Awards, not a royal engagement. We are here to celebrate television excellence. Don't lecture me about respect while you strip me of it," he shot back, pointing a finger. "You invited me here under false pretenses." Backstage, a floor manager hovered over the go to commercial button, but the cameras stayed trained and Victoria's expression finally hardened. "This is my show, my stage, and my format. If you can't conduct yourself professionally, maybe you should reconsider participating." Harry's head tilted, the move almost predatory. "Did you just threaten me on live television?" "No," she said, voice crisp. "I stated a fact." And with that, the air changed. This was no longer an awards segment. It was a duel. The audience didn't breathe, the cameras didn't blink. Harry leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You've made a serious mistake tonight, and I promise everyone will pay for it." The golden glow of the stage lights couldn't mask the sudden chill that spread through the auditorium. Harry's last words still hung in the air like smoke. Toxic, lingering, impossible to ignore. Victoria stood perfectly still, her eyes locked on him. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't backing down. Harry, she began, her voice steady, no one here is trying to disrespect you. We have a format. Don't tell me about format, he cut in sharply, his voice climbing over hers. Do you have any idea how insulting this is? I am Prince Harry. You will address me properly. A ripple of discomfort passed through the audience. In the front row, an actress whispered something to the man beside her. He shook his head as if to say, don't get involved. The cameras caught the subtle movement of people shifting in their seats, as though the tension had weight. Victoria's tone cooled. We've had guests from every walk of life, heads of state, decorated soldiers, even royalty. I am royalty, he snapped, stepping forward. The microphone caught the low, simmering growl in his voice. That doesn't change because you decided to strip it away for the sake of some egalitarian stunt. From the wings, a producer waved frantically to the control booth, but the director didn't dare cut away. This was television history in the making, the kind you don't interrupt. Victoria drew in a breath and let it out slowly, every second measured. Harry, with respect, your title is part of your history. Tonight, you're here for your work as a documentary producer. That's how we honor every guest, by recognizing their current achievements, not just their past. Honor? He laughed, but it was hollow, jagged around the edges. You call this honor? This is humiliation. You've taken my identity and reduced it to whatever fits your little script. The murmur in the audience swelled, a low, restless wave of energy. Somewhere in the balcony, a voice called out, just give him the title. But it was swallowed by the tension. Victoria's patience thinned to a thread. Your identity is not in question here. Your behavior is. That landed like a slap. Harry's face tightened, his jaw working. My behavior. I came here in good faith. I agreed to appear, to lend your little award show some prestige. Prestige? Victoria's eyes narrowed. Harry, the Dorian Awards have stood for years on the merit of television excellence, not borrowed celebrity status. We don't need, you do need me, he fired back. These people, he gestured toward the crowd, tuned in for me, not for your speech, not for your rules. The words dripped arrogance. The crowd shifted again, the applause they'd given minutes earlier now a distant memory. Victoria's voice took on a sharper edge. Harry, I've hosted presidents, Nobel laureates, and yes, royalty, but I have never had a guest demand special treatment on live television. That's not respect, that's entitlement. The word hit him like a physical blow. Entitlement. His eyes flashed, his nostrils flared. Entitlement? Asking for the title I was born with is entitlement? Respect is earned, Victoria said, her voice cutting through the silence. Not demanded. And with that, the auditorium erupted, not in applause, but in gasps, whispers, and the sound of every camera in the room zooming in on Harry's face. His cheeks were flushed, his breathing quickened. For a heartbeat, it looked like he might try to compose himself, but then something inside him cracked. You'll regret this, he said, his voice trembling with fury. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Victoria didn't flinch. I think the world is starting to see exactly who we're dealing with. That single line felt like a hammer striking glass. The tension in the room fractured into something raw, unpredictable, and dangerous. The studio air was thick now. every breath heavy with anticipation and unease. The polite smiles in the audience had evaporated. All that remained was the sharp focus of hundreds of eyes fixed on the confrontation unfolding under the relentless heat of the lights. Harry stood stiffly, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. He was still trying to maintain the regal posture drilled into him since childhood, but his control was slipping. The tremor in his jaw betrayed him. Victoria took a deliberate step closer to the podium, refusing to yield even an inch of authority. Harry, you came here as a guest. We welcomed you with the same respect we give to every honoree and presenter. The only one trying to change that dynamic is you. Change the dynamic? His voice cracked with incredulity. You reduce me to just another presenter. I am not here to be treated like some... He stopped himself, but the implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Victoria's eyes sharpened. Like some what? Ordinary person? Someone without a title? Harry's lips pressed into a thin line. You're twisting my words. No, Harry, she replied coolly. I'm holding up a mirror, and you don't like what you see. The crowd's murmur spiked again, a living, breathing reaction feeding off every barb. The camera operators knew they were capturing something that would be replayed for days, maybe weeks. A close-up revealed a bead of sweat trailing down Harry's temple. You think you're clever, he said, his tone dropping into a low, dangerous register. You think this is just good television. But what you're doing is undermining centuries of tradition, of service. Service, Victoria cut in sharply. Walking away from royal duties and still expecting royal privilege is not service. It's convenience. The line hit like a lightning strike. Gasps erupted across the auditorium, and somewhere in the back, someone actually clapped once before realizing the room wasn't ready to choose sides. Harry's voice grew louder, matching the pulse of his anger. You know nothing about the sacrifices I've made, the life I've left behind. Harry, everyone sacrifices, Victoria shot back. That doesn't give you a free pass to demand special treatment. Not here, not anywhere. The tension reached a boiling point. Harry stepped forward, so close to Victoria that the space between them seemed to vanish. The audience collectively held its breath. His voice was a harsh whisper into the microphone. You've humiliated me in front of millions. No, Victoria countered, her eyes locked on his. You've done that all by yourself. The words landed with surgical precision, cutting through the roar in Harry's head. For a fraction of a second he froze, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had too much to say. His breathing was fast, uneven. His composure had crumbled completely. This, he hissed, isn't over. He reached for the lapel microphone, fumbling with the clip as the cables tugged against his jacket. The producers in the wings looked panicked, gesturing wildly to keep the cameras rolling. Harry's hands shook, and the more he struggled with the mic, the more his frustration grew. Finally, he yanked it free, the sudden movement causing a burst of feedback to shriek through the speakers. The audience winced at the sound, but their eyes never left him. I don't need this, Harry said, his voice now fully untethered from the formal polish he'd walked in with. I don't need your stage. I don't need your fake respect. I am Prince Harry, and I will not stand here and be diminished. Victoria didn't step back. She didn't even blink. Then maybe you should leave. The line was delivered calmly, but it might as well have been a cannon blast. For a heartbeat, Harry stood frozen. Then his body jolted into motion, turning sharply toward the edge of the stage. The audience was silent except for the faint squeak of his shoes against the polished floor. He was heading for the exit, and everyone knew the moment he reached that door, nothing about this night or his reputation would ever be the same. The stage felt suddenly too small for the two of them. Every step Harry took toward the wing seemed to carry the weight of centuries, not of duty, but of bruised ego. The audience leaned forward as if proximity could make sense of the spectacle unraveling in front of them. Victoria's voice rang out, sharp and deliberate. Harry, think about what you're doing. You're making this worse. He stopped mid-stride, the spotlight catching the tension in his shoulders. Slowly he turned back, eyes blazing. Worse? You humiliate me on live television. You strip me of my title, and now you have the audacity to lecture me. The camera zoomed in on his face, flushed, tight-lipped, the controlled facade from earlier shattered beyond repair. In the front row, a talk show host whispered to her companion, "This is career suicide," unaware her words might be caught on a hot mic. Victoria didn't flinch. No one stripped you of anything. You came here as a presenter and you've turned it into a spectacle about your ego. My ego? His laugh was short, humorless. You think standing up for the respect I've earned is ego. You think demanding the courtesy I'm entitled to is arrogance. Respect, Victoria said, stepping closer, isn't about titles. It's about how you treat people when you're not getting exactly what you want. A ripple of applause broke out in the back rows, hesitant at first but undeniable. Harry heard it and his jaw tightened further. You think this is some kind of victory for you? That you've made some point? All you've done is show the world how little you value what I represent. And you've shown them, Victoria countered, exactly who you are when the world doesn't bend to you. The words sliced through the room, sharp enough to draw an audible gasp from several audience members. Harry's eyes darted around at the cameras, the crowd, the blinking red lights signaling every angle was still rolling. Then came the final snap. He ripped the mic pack from his waistband, letting it drop to the stage floor with a metallic thud. The sound echoed in the silence, followed by the high-pitched screech of feedback. "I'm done," he said, voice raw. "Done with this charade, done with your fake equality. Done with being treated like I'm disposable." Victoria's tone was calm, but each word landed with precision. "You're not disposable, Harry, but tonight you've made yourself replaceable." For a split second, he froze as though the statement had pierced deeper than anything she'd said all night. Then, without another word, he turned and strode toward the stage steps. The audience was so quiet, the faint creak of the wooden stair under his weight sounded deafening. As he reached the floor, he turned back one last time. His voice carried, cold and certain. "History will remember this, and it won't remember you kindly." Victoria didn't break eye contact. "History remembers the truth. That's what will last." And with that, Harry pushed through the exit door, disappearing from view, leaving behind a silent crowd, a steel-eyed host, and a moment destined to live forever in viral infamy. The heavy stage doors swung shut behind Harry, the metallic clunk echoing in the stunned silence like a gavel strike. The audience remained frozen, hundreds of faces suspended between disbelief and morbid fascination. Even the cameras hesitated, their operators unsure whether to follow Harry into the shadows or stay locked on the woman still standing center stage. Victoria Sterling didn't move for a long moment. She let the weight of what had just happened hang in the air, every heartbeat stretching into an eternity. Then she turned toward the crowd, her voice low but clear, the kind that cuts through chaos without needing to shout. "Well," she said, her tone laced with measured composure, "this is live television." A nervous laugh rippled through the room, quickly morphing into genuine applause. Not for the confrontation, but for her unshaken presence. Still, the tension hadn't fully lifted. The audience was buzzing with a kind of restless energy that only came from witnessing something they knew would be dissected for days. Backstage, a flurry of movement was underway. Producers whispered urgently into headsets, trying to decide if they should pivot immediately to the next segment or address what had just happened. Assistants ran toward the exit Harry had vanished through, some out of duty, others out of morbid curiosity. In the control booth, the director's voice crackled over comms. "Stay with her. Full close-up. Don't cut away." Victoria inhaled, then let out a steadying breath. She looked straight into the camera. No teleprompter, no script, just raw presence. "We came here tonight to celebrate television excellence," she said. "And that's still what we're going to do because respect, the real kind, is about how we handle moments when things don't go our way." The words landed with quiet power, the subtext clear to anyone who had just witnessed the blowout. Her gaze didn't waver, and for a brief moment, it felt as though she wasn't speaking just to the audience in the room, but to the millions watching at home, and maybe even to the man who had just walked out. From the balcony, someone started clapping. It spread like wildfire, rolling through the auditorium until the entire room was on its feet. The applause wasn't polite. It was purposeful, unified, a visible line in the sand. Meanwhile, in the corridors beyond the stage, Harry's retreat was anything but graceful. Stagehands pressed against the walls as he passed, his expression a storm of fury and wounded pride. He muttered under his breath fragments of sentences that made no coherent sense, as though still rehearsing the fight he wished he'd won. When he reached the building's side entrance, the muffled roar of the crowd filtered through the door, a sound that told him without words that the room had chosen its side. Back in the spotlight, Victoria smiled. Not the warm, television-ready smile from earlier, but a small, almost imperceptible curve of satisfaction. She straightened her notes, signaling the next award, and in that instant, it was as if the confrontation had never happened, at least on the surface. But everyone in that room knew better. They had been part of something that would be replayed in slow motion, analyzed frame by frame, and immortalized in headlines. It wasn't just an awards show anymore. It was a cultural flashpoint. The closing shot of the segment captured Victoria, bathed in golden light, as the applause swelled again. Somewhere off camera, a producer whispered, "This is going to break the internet." He was right. By morning, hashtags would trend worldwide, pundits would debate who was right, and clips would flood every platform. But one truth would be impossible to edit out. On this night, in this room, a prince had demanded the world bend, and the world refused.